Welcome forward, chapter 2, page 12, Jesus' Course in Miracles. Only while there are different degrees is learning meaningful. The evolution of man is merely a process by which he proceeds from one degree to the next. He corrects his previous missteps by stepping forward. This represents a process which is actually incomprehensible in temporal terms, because he returns as he goes forward. The atonement is the device by which he can free himself from the past as he goes ahead. It undoes his past errors, thus making it unnecessary for him to keep retracing his steps without advancing to his return. In this sense, the atonement saves time, but like the miracle which serves it does not abolish it. As long as there is need for atonement, there is need for time. But the atonement, as a completed plan, does have a unique relationship to time. Until the atonement is finished, its various phases will proceed in time, but the whole atonement stands at time's end. At this point, the bridge of the return has been built. The atonement is a total commitment. You still think this is an association with loss? This is the same mistake all the separated ones make in one way or another. They cannot believe that a defense which cannot attack is the best defense. This is what is meant by the meek shall inherit the earth. They will literally take it over because of their strength. A two-way defense is inherently weak precisely because it has two edges and can turn against itself, or turn against the self very unexpectedly. This tendency cannot be controlled except by miracles. The miracle turns the defense of atonement to the protection of the inner self, which, as it becomes more and more secure, assumes its natural talent of protecting others. The inner self knows itself as both a brother and a son. You know that when defenses are disrupted, there is a period of real disorientation, accompanied by fear, guilt, and usually vacillations between anxiety and depression. This course is different in that defenses are not being disrupted, but reinterpreted, even though you may experience it as the same thing. In the reinterpretation of defenses, only their use for attack is lost, since this means they can be used only one way. They become much stronger and much more dependable. They no longer oppose the atonement, but completely facilitate it. The atonement can only be accepted within you. You have perceived it largely as external thus far, and that is why your experience of it has been minimal. The reinterpretation of defense is essential in releasing the inner light. Since the separation, man's defenses have been used almost entirely to defend himself against the atonement and thus maintaining the separation. They themselves generally see this as a need to protect the body. The many body fantasies with which man's minds are engaged arise from the distorted beliefs that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement. Perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this kind of distortion. It alters parts of this misperception, but not all of it. It does recognize, however, that the concept of atonement in physical terms is not appropriate. However, the next step is to realize that a temple is not a building at all. Its real holiness lies in the inner altar, around which the building is built. The inappropriate emphasis man have put on beautiful churches building as a sign of their fear of atonement and their unwillingness to reach the altar itself. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. The spiritual eye, on the other hand, cannot see the building at all because it has perfect sight. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. For perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind. Before this separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear, because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear are miscreations of the mind, which must be undone. This is what is meant by the restoration of the temple. It does not mean the restoration of the building, but the opening of the altar to receive the atonement. This heals the separation and places within man the one defense against all, separation, mind errors, which can make it perfectly invulnerable. The acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. In fact, both time and matter were created for this purpose. This appears to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision. If you review the idea carefully, however, you will realize that this is not true. Everything is limited in some way by the manner of its creation. Free will can temporize and is capable of enormous procrastination, but it cannot depart entirely from its Creator, who set the limits on its ability to miscreate by virtue of its own real purpose. The misuse of will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Pain thresholds can be high, but they are not limitless. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a perceptual turning point. This ultimately reawakens the spiritual eye, simultaneously weakening the investment of the physical sight. The alternating investment in the two types of levels or levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict for a long time and can become very acute, but the outcome is as certain as God. The spiritual eye literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All of the solutions which the physical eye seeks dissolves in its sight. The spiritual eye, which looks within, recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Thus ends page 12.